The book of Judges tells a turbulent story of the Israelites. The Israelites were 12 tribes descended from the patriarch Jacob. After entering the Promised Land, they struggled to establish a unified nation. Instead, they were often divided by tribal rivalries and conflicts. Judges, charismatic leaders raised by God, arose in times of crisis to deliver the Israelites from their enemies. However, periods of peace and unity were often followed by moral decline and idolatry. This tale narrates a particularly dark chapter in Israelite history. It began with a Levite traveling with his concubine. They sought lodging in Gibeah, a city within the territory of the tribe of Benjamin. The men of Gibeah, described as wicked and depraved, assaulted the Levite and raped his concubine throughout the night. The concubine died from the ordeal. The Levite, outraged and seeking justice, dismembered the body of his concubine and sent the pieces to all the tribes of Israel. This gruesome act ignited a firestorm of anger and revulsion. The Israelites united against the Benjaminites, demanding they hand over the perpetrators for punishment. The Benjaminites refused, and a bloody civil war ensued. The war against Benjamin was long and brutal. The Israelites, though numerically superior, suffered heavy losses at the hands of the fierce Benjaminite warriors. Twice the Israelites were defeated, leaving them disheartened and questioning God's will. Eventually, after seeking divine guidance, they prevailed, almost annihilating the tribe of Benjamin. In the aftermath of the war, the Israelites were consumed by remorse. They had nearly wiped out one of their own tribes. Adding to their distress was an oath they had sworn at the outset of the war: they would not give their daughters in marriage to any Benjaminite. This oath, intended to isolate and punish the tribe, now threatened the very existence of Benjamin. Faced with the prospect of losing a tribe entirely, the Israelites were in a state of deep concern and desperation. They sought a solution that would both uphold their oath and ensure Benjamin's survival. After much deliberation, they discovered that the inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead, a city in the territory of Manasseh, had not joined the war against Benjamin. As punishment for their neutrality, the Israelites put the men of Jabesh-Gilead to the sword, sparing only 400 virgins. These 400 virgins were given to the surviving Benjaminites as wives. However, this still left a shortage of women for the remaining Benjaminite men. The Israelites devised a plan. They instructed the Benjaminites to lie in wait during an annual festival held at Shiloh, a central sanctuary for the Israelites. When the young women of Shiloh came out to dance in the vineyards during the festival, the Benjaminites were to seize them and take them as wives. The Israelites assured the Benjaminites that they would not be held accountable for this act, claiming it was God's will to repopulate the tribe. This plan was seen as a divine intervention, a way to restore balance and ensure the continuity of the Benjaminite lineage. The festival at Shiloh, usually a time of joy and celebration, became a pivotal moment in the history of the Israelites, marked by the abduction of the virgins. This event, though controversial, was accepted by the community as a necessary measure to preserve one of their own tribes from extinction. The story of the kidnapping of the virgins of Shiloh is deeply disturbing and unsettling. It involves abduction, forced marriage, and the exploitation of women to solve a problem created by men, highlighting the severe gender inequalities of the time. The Israelites, driven by a combination of remorse, pragmatism, and a warped sense of divine will, resorted to a solution that violated the very principles of justice and compassion they claimed to uphold. Their actions were a stark contradiction to the moral values they professed. The young women of Shiloh were innocent victims in this saga, caught in the crossfire of tribal politics and male dominance. They were denied their agency and forced into marriages they did not choose, stripped of their autonomy and subjected to a life they did not consent to. Their plight serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of women in ancient Israelite society, where their fates were often decided by the whims of men. Their voices are silent in the biblical narrative, their experiences reduced to a footnote in the larger story of tribal conflict and reconciliation. This silence speaks volumes about the marginalization of women and the erasure of their suffering from historical records. Adding to the troubling nature of this story is the apparent silence of God. Nowhere in the text do we find condemnation of the Israelites' actions. Some might argue that the Israelites believed they were acting in accordance with God's will, as evidenced by their consultation with the priestly oracle. However, the absence of explicit divine approval leaves a chilling ambiguity hanging over the entire episode. The silence of God in the face of such morally questionable actions raises difficult questions about the nature of divine justice and the interpretation of Scripture. It challenges us to grapple with the complexities of the Old Testament, where narratives often reflect the harsh realities and moral ambiguities of the ancient world. The story of the Benjaminites and the virgins of Shiloh highlights the destructive consequences of vengeance and the cyclical nature of violence. The Israelites, seeking retribution for the sin of Gibeah, engaged in a bloody civil war that nearly led to the annihilation of a tribe. Their oath of vengeance, while understandable in the heat of the moment, ultimately created a moral quagmire that resulted in further violence and injustice. This cycle of violence is a recurring theme throughout human history. One act of aggression begets another, leading to a spiral of retaliation and suffering. The story of the Benjaminites serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked anger and the importance of seeking peaceful resolutions to conflict. The virgins of Shiloh, victims of circumstance. The young women of Shiloh were caught in the crossfire of a conflict they did not create. They were treated as pawns in a game of tribal politics, their lives and futures sacrificed on the altar of expediency and patriarchal control. Their story is a stark reminder of the human cost of war and the often invisible suffering of women in times of conflict. While the biblical narrative does not dwell on the experiences of these women, we can imagine the trauma and upheaval they must have endured. Forced from their homes and families, they were thrust into marriages with men they did not know, their lives forever altered by an act of violence they had no part in. A stain on Israelite history. The abduction of the virgins of Shiloh stands as a dark chapter in the history of the Israelites. It is a story of moral compromise, tribalism, and the exploitation of the vulnerable. While some might attempt to justify the Israelites' actions as a necessary evil to preserve a tribe, the ethical implications of their choices cannot be ignored. The legacy of Shiloh serves as a reminder that even those who claim to follow God are capable of great wrongdoing. It challenges us to confront the uncomfortable truths within our own sacred texts and to wrestle with the complex moral questions they raise. Despite its troubling nature, the story of the virgins of Shiloh offers valuable moral lessons for readers today. It teaches us about the dangers of vengeance, the cyclical nature of violence, and the importance of protecting the vulnerable. It also challenges us to examine our own biases and prejudices, particularly towards women, and to advocate for justice and equality in our own time. The story of Shiloh is not an isolated incident in human history. It reflects a timeless struggle between our better angels and our baser instincts, a struggle that continues to play out in various forms throughout the world today. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. The story of the virgins of Shiloh, like many narratives in the Old Testament, can be challenging for modern readers. These stories often contain elements that are foreign to our contemporary values and beliefs. It reflects a different time and culture, with different social norms and moral sensibilities. The customs and traditions of ancient Middle Eastern societies were vastly different from what we know today. However, it is important to remember that the Bible is not a monolithic text with a single univocal message. Instead, it is a rich tapestry of narratives, laws, prophecies, and poetry. It is a collection of diverse writings, spanning centuries, that reflect the complexities of human experience and the evolving nature of our understanding of God. These texts offer insights into the spiritual and moral development of humanity over time. When encountering difficult or disturbing passages in the Bible, it is crucial to approach them with humility, sensitivity, and a willingness to engage in critical reflection. This means not shying away from the uncomfortable aspects, but rather confronting them thoughtfully. Rather than seeking to justify or excuse the actions of the characters involved, we should strive to understand the historical and cultural context in which these stories were written. By doing so, we can glean from them timeless moral lessons that can guide our lives today. Engaging in discussions with others can also provide new perspectives and deeper understanding. Though written thousands of years ago, the stories of the Bible continue to resonate with readers today because they speak to universal human experiences and concerns. The story of the virgins of Shiloh, despite its troubling aspects, can teach us about the destructive power of vengeance, the importance of empathy and compassion, and the need to protect the vulnerable in our midst. By engaging with these ancient tales, we can gain insights into the human condition, confront uncomfortable truths about our past, and find guidance for navigating the moral complexities of our own time. The Bible, in all its richness and ambiguity, offers a timeless wellspring of wisdom and inspiration for those willing to delve into its pages with open minds and hearts. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please come and join our growing family and subscribe to our channel. May God bless you in all your endeavors. Thank you for watching.